We've endured too many of these tragedies in the past few years. As a country, we have been through this too many times. The majority of those who died were children. Beautiful little kids. They had their entire lives ahead of them. Birthdays, graduations, weddings, kids of their own. Among the fallen were also parents and grandparents, sisters and brothers of these little children. And they need all of us right now. And we're going to have to come together and take meaningful action to prevent more tragedies like this, regardless of the politics. May God bless the memory of the victims. I have two words for you: predator drones. You will never see it coming. You think I'm joking?
Shortly after Obama's re-election in November, he carried out a purge of several generals and a two-star admiral. Not only were these top military brass axed, but they were forced to resign or step down in disgrace by this regime despite a lifetime of service to their country. Here's a timeline in chronological order of the systematic removal of top military brass that occurred in the span of only a month. On September 21st, Brigadier General Jeffrey Sinclair was relieved of command and charged with sexual misconduct. On April 18th, Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta announced that General Ham was being replaced as commander of U.S. Africa Command, or AFRICOM. Panetta gave no explanation for General Ham's removal. On October 28th, Rear Admiral Charles Goyer, the commander of the John C. Stennis Carrier Strike Group in the Middle East, was abruptly removed from command and returned to the United States. On November 2nd, Commander Joseph Darlek was relieved of his command for alleged drunkenness. On November 9th, General Petraeus, former commander of the U.S. forces in Iraq and Afghanistan, resigned as head of the Central Intelligence Agency. On November 13th, amidst news stories reporting that General Allen, who was General Petraeus' successor in Afghanistan and top nominee for NATO's Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, was embroiled in a potential scandal involving emails with Jill Kelly, a socialite at MacDill Air Force Base. Allen has insisted that there was no improper relationship between himself and Ms. Kelly, but his career path to the top NATO post had been snuffed out. On November 13th, General William Kip Ward, former head of U.S. AFRICOM, was stripped of his 4th star by Leon Panetta, following a lengthy DoD Inspector General probe that found that Ward was guilty of lavish spending and extravagant travel. Doesn't it seem odd that after a lifetime of military service to their country, these 7 men holding some of the highest military ranks were all of a sudden within the span of a month, accused of, not necessarily convicted of, scandalous behavior and summarily forced to resign in disgrace by Obama's regime. I want to show you some other information regarding these men that is not being discussed in the mainstream media, and how this information does not bode well for Obama and his regime with regard to the September 11th Benghazi incident. General Carter Ham. The dismissal of Ham is interesting because there are reports that he had assets in place set to rescue Libyan ambassador Christopher Stevens and his team, but he was ordered to stand down. During the Benghazi attack, General Ham was receiving the same emails the White House was receiving, requesting support as the attack was underway. Ham got a rapid response unit ready with the support of Admiral Goyer and communicated that with the Pentagon. When he was told to stand down, Ham responded he was not going to obey the order. Less than a minute later, his second-in-command, Assistant Commander General David Rodriguez, arrested General Ham, and he was summarily relieved of his command. 5 weeks later, after the Benghazi attack on October 18th, Obama promotes Rodriguez, and Leon Panetta takes center stage in announcing that General David Rodriguez, the man who arrested General Ham for attempting to avert the massacre in Benghazi, would be assuming the role of Supreme Commander of the U.S. AFRICOM operation, a ranking position previously held by General Ham. Referring to Rodriguez's nomination, Panetta was quoted as saying, "He's a proven leader and a key architect of the successful campaign plan we are now implementing in North Africa." Regarding the Benghazi incident, the only thing I can say is he's proven that he will follow orders without question, even if they result in the deaths of the men under his command. That's not a leader. That's a tool for the regime. Rear Admiral Charles Goyer. General Ham was in contact with Admiral Goyer during the attack at Benghazi, and he agreed to provide air support and intelligence to assist General Ham in protecting his troops on the ground under attack. The plan was that one of the Special Forces soldiers located on an adjacent rooftop would paint the Libyan mortar team that was targeting the CIA annex, and Goyer would provide airstrike capability. He too was immediately relieved of command, pending an investigation of allegations of inappropriate judgment, according to Leon Panetta. I guess it is now considered a dereliction of duty, or according to Panetta, quote, inappropriate judgment for officers and members of the armed forces to do their jobs and keep the oath they took when they joined the military. General David Petraeus. While Benghazi Gate was unraveling just before the November election, allegations of an extramarital affair with one of the most highly decorated generals is thrown into the arena of public opinion weeks before the election. Why? Could it be that in his current position as director of the CIA, Petraeus had damning intel regarding the events and motives behind those events that transpired during the hours of the Benghazi massacre? Could it be because Petraeus told the Senate and House Intelligence Committees on September 14th of 2012 that the mob attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi 3 days earlier was a spontaneous reaction of Libyans angered over a YouTube video? A cover story now proven to be a lie to misdirect us from the real truth. And that is that the CIA had an interrogation facility at the compound, and the compound was being used to negotiate arms deals with terrorist organizations. Is it a far stretch to conclude that Petraeus had detailed knowledge of military-grade weaponry being funneled to terrorist organizations like the FSA by the CIA through Ambassador Stevens to further destabilize Syria and Iran to facilitate the collapse of their governments so they could be overrun by the Muslim Brotherhood, just like Obama's regime did in Libya. Or how about this crisis to cover up a staged kidnapping of Ambassador Stevens in order to negotiate the release of the blind sheikh in a high-level hostage exchange? In June of 2012, Egyptian President Morsi pledged to secure the release of the blind sheikh. How could he make such a bold promise unless he was privy to the plans of the staged kidnapping? There are a lot of questions surrounding the convenient timing of Petraeus' resignation. For instance, it's been reported that the FBI background check he was having an affair with Paula Broadwell back in March of 2012. Isn't it odd that FBI agents would be reading the emails of the CIA director to his mistress, and that the director of the FBI, who briefs the president weekly, did not make the president aware of this? Assuming the president was briefed, what can we conclude based on the fact that Petraeus, director of the CIA, was open to blackmail and yet remained in that position from March through November of 2012, vulnerable to compromise? Could it be that Petraeus' resignation had nothing to do with an affair and everything to do with refusing to take the heat off Obama by publicly stating it was the CIA who gave the order to stand down in Benghazi? And what about the 9 lawsuits against Jill Kelly, involved with both Petraeus and General Allen? These lawsuits amounted to tens of thousands of dollars against her and her husband. In Trial Law 101, wouldn't this go to motive? Why isn't this angle being discussed by the prostitutes in the mainstream media? This would certainly go towards the questioning, if not destroying her credibility as a victim in this setup. General John Allen. After weeks of being smeared and his reputation dragged through the mud, Allen was cleared of charges by the Pentagon of allegations of inappropriate behavior involving Jill Kelly, which he denied all along, but not before being replaced by General Joseph Dunford as commander of NATO forces in Europe. In 1934, under fears of a coup, Hitler purged by execution at least 85 people, many of them military brass he feared were not 100% loyal to his cause. The Night of the Long Knives was a turning point for Hitler's regime, as it established him as, quote, the supreme judge of the German people. Since the Benghazi incident on September 11th, Obama has purged, demoted, or forced into resignation at least 50 ranking military officers. The Russian military's GRU, Foreign Intelligence Unit, presented a report to the Kremlin leadership in late September that said Obama removed one of the United States Navy's most powerful admirals from his command in the wake of Benghazi's 9/11, specifically because he fears a military coup is being planned against him. Narcissism is often accompanied by paranoia. Some believe the president manufactured his anger in the rush to defend UN Ambassador Susan Rice for her role in the Benghazi fiasco. The president stated he did not appreciate those who were besmirching the reputation of one of his appointees, yet he's been busy removing our top military commanders at lightning speed. Are we seeing the beginning of Obama's Night of the Long Knives? Would it be a fair assessment to conclude that before he can ensure the total destruction of America by surrendering us to global governance under the direction of the United Nations, would he not have to first decimate the military and replace patriots with puppets he commands 100% loyalty from? We are living in very interesting times. Please leave your comments for discussion below, and please share this video.
I understand you may disagree, but we've got to be able to talk honestly about these issues, all right? Now, you're absolutely right that there have been significant numbers of deportations. That's true. But what you're not paying attention to is the fact that I just took an action to change the law. Now, so that's point number one. We agreed at the G7 to continue to lead by example in the fight against climate change, which poses a danger to our environment, our economies, and our national security. I made it clear that the United States will continue to do our part. Earlier this week, we took a major step, proposing new standards that for the first time would limit carbon pollution from our existing power plants. This is one of the most ambitious steps that any nation has taken to combat climate change. It would reduce carbon emissions from our electricity sector by 30%. It will help us meet the commitments that we made when I first came into office at Copenhagen, and it will improve our public health. It's also going to be good for our economy by helping to create more clean energy jobs and ultimately lower electricity bills for Americans. So it's the right thing to do.
Good morning, this is Hector Rivas with While You Were Sleeping. One matter remains. The only hope in averting a total Hitler fascist coup emanating from the backers of Barack Obama and Barack Obama himself is to enact Glass-Steagall right now. The final vote yesterday turned up 174 from the Republicans and 95 Democrats voting in favor of Obama's Hitler coup, agreed upon at the White House Sunday meeting. The bill to authorize a Supreme Congress to act on and initiate an additional trillions worth of cuts, whether the actual legislative body of the federal government approves of it or not. Those who voted in its favor, those who consented to Obama's will, have earned themselves a rightful place in the defendant's chair of a modern-day Nuremberg trial. Stated last night and earlier this morning, Lyndon LaRouche voiced that this vote brings us that much closer to the imminent destruction of the United States. The people who voted for it have committed an act of treason on behalf of a foreign power, whether they knew it or not. In viewing Nancy Pelosi's statement after turning to vote in its favor, it's revealed that certain members of Congress knew that they were signing on to bring about the death of the United States and the world at large, virtually at the point of a gun. To the press, Pelosi stated that the bill might be a Satan sandwich, but I will absolutely support it. Following comments from Representative Emanuel Cleaver, who voted against Obama's coup, who identified the president's debt deal as a sugar-coated Satan sandwich.
The 264 congressmen who voted to support Obama's coup have committed an act of treason, whether they are conscious of it or not. If the implications of this vote are allowed to stand, and Obama is allowed to have his way, the total destruction of the United States will occur in very short order. By virtue of the mass of deaths of American citizens and others around the world, which will occur as a result, those who voted in support of Obama now find themselves with blood on their hands. And just as was said in the tribunals at Nuremberg, ignorance is no excuse. Known or should have known. The support for this emergency decree, for Obama's enabling acts, is an act of treason, a criminal violation of the U.S. Constitution. This vote represents the nullification of every essential feature of our federal constitutional system, and the loss of the United States as a free and independent republic is now assured unless this president is called to account for this treasonous crime committed on behalf of the British monarchy. The coup we warned you about is now here. The British Empire is out to eliminate any and all opposition to its power as the world financial system comes down. Obama was planted in the White House with only one purpose: the destruction of the United States. He has blocked every effort to assert our sovereign constitutional right to protect our people in the face of the enemy. He has opposed the orderly reorganization of the gambling debts accrued by London and Wall Street. He has colluded with a foreign power to orchestrate an environment of terror to force through this fascist coup. He has formed an unconstitutional body in the form of a super Congress to dictate fascist austerity against American citizens. He has eliminated the power of democratically elected representatives to challenge, debate, or amend these murderous cuts. And he has declared that the Congress has no option but to concede their legally mandated power to grant him and his chosen Committee of 12 total and ultimate control over the lives and destinies of our people. And last night, in an act of high treason, the Congress conceded to this dictatorship.
America, the truth is that every bit of policy emanating from this administration, all building into the recent House's passing of the President's debt deal, is an act of war against the American people. The bailout policy. What else is the bailout policy but a modern-day decree of Adolf Hitler's useless eaters program? Look at the facts. Of the $2.8 trillion in bonded indebtedness of U.S. states and municipalities, $500 billion was estimated to be directly the result of fraud by Wall Street derivatives and interest swaps. Former chief executive officer of a defunct New York brokerage firm even admitted to having conspired with major financial institutions in creating fraudulent bids on municipal derivative contracts. Bank of America Corp., UBS AG, and JP Morgan Chase all admitted to an investigation that they too engaged in fraud. And who are these institutions? The recipients of Obama's bailout. The Wall Street banks who admitted to an investigation that they indeed committed fraud against U.S. municipalities and are rewarded by this president with taxpayer money via bailouts, via quantitative easing. By this president who at the same time tells the American people that they should sacrifice and tighten their belts. An act of war on the people of the United States. An aggression to be ended with simply enacting H.R. 1489 to enforce Glass-Steagall, and all these fraudulent claims will be canceled. The bailout made illegal and void. The threat of an ultimate fascist coup with their puppet Barack Obama averted. But we have to choose that we wanted and fight vigorously for it. Time is running out. The Supreme Congress is essentially in place. If we let this president go this far, what else will we concede?
The privilege of opening the first trial in history for crimes against the peace of the world imposes a great responsibility.
After the trials in Nuremberg, said to the world that though they knew they had consented to Adolf Hitler, they did not know what happened. They did not know it would lead to such a massacre. In reality, they knew it was going to happen the very first day they consented to what they knew was a Satan sandwich.
The privilege of opening the first trial in history.
LaRouche PAC and the six-candidate LaRouche Democratic slate is calling on all Americans to join us immediately to oppose this dictatorial coup. We have only one weapon for the strategic defense of this nation: the immediate reenactment of Roosevelt's Glass-Steagall. Glass-Steagall will bring our enemies to their knees by bankrupting the British system, and will finally restore the sovereignty of the American constitutional republic. Only the full and total commitment to this piece of legislation will give us the power to head off this fascist coup d'etat. The Democrats have failed. The Republicans have failed. Now it's those patriots who are willing to fight beside Lyndon LaRouche and the 6 LaRouche candidates who have the moral authority to lead this nation. To throw Obama out of office, to halt his Hitler coup, and to defend the Constitution of this republic against our enemies in the British Empire. The battle has just begun. We will not give up this war.
Surprise, surprise. Sheriff Joe Arpaio of Maricopa County, Arizona, has constituted a special 5-member law enforcement investigations panel to investigate allegations that were brought by members of the Surprise Arizona Tea Party that Obama's supposed birth certificate that he released to the public on April 27th might be a forgery. The investigation was begun after citizens of Maricopa County told the sheriff that they felt their voting rights would be compromised if a candidate was on the ballot for president who was not legally qualified to be there. The sheriff's panel, assembled under the authority of Arpaio's office, consists of 3 former law enforcement officers, 2 retired attorneys with law enforcement experience. Members have been examining the evidence since September concerning Obama's eligibility to be the president under Article 2, Section 1 of the United States Constitution. The sheriff's investigation is now raising questions that touch on the authenticity of the long-form birth certificate issued last April and the possibility that Obama is using a fraudulent Social Security number. It is being reported that the Sheriff's Investigations Panel now needs to examine the microfilm documenting Obama's birth, as well as the ink and paper original 1961 birth records the Hawaii Department of Health is holding in its vault, reportedly. The PDF file and various scanned copies of the birth certificate that the White House released on April the 27th are simply not good enough, the Criminal Investigations Panel has determined. The panel apparently feels that an individual microfilm copy could be forged, but forging the entire microfilm reel on which Obama's birth certificate is in sequence would be practically impossible. The sheriff's panel also wants the ink and paper original 1961 Obama birth records still held in the vault by the Hawaii Department of Health to be released publicly and subjected to independent court-authorized forensic examination. The panel is also reported to have interviewed court-certified forensic examiners who have advised that they can only issue an expert opinion on whether Obama's birth certificate is a forgery if they can examine the original ink and paper records. In addition to examining whether or not the long-form birth certificate is a forgery, the panel is also examining evidence that Obama may have a fraudulent Social Security number. The panel also is looking at records pertaining to Obama's birth narrative that suggest Barack Obama Sr. may not be the biological father. Reportedly, this cold case posse has assembled some 2,000 pages of evidence in the case and is now preparing to conduct interviews to examine a wide range of questions, including that Obama may not be qualified to be president under Article 2, Section 1 because he was a dual citizen at birth, given that his father was listed as a citizen of Kenya when the future president was born. Sheriff Arpaio's cold case posse is currently in the process of briefing various Arizona state officials about the progress of the investigation. Finally, this case is being examined on its merits and the hard evidence by real-life, Constitution-loving law enforcement officials. Stay tuned for more.
كسر الصليب الكلاب الله أكبر هذه مطيح يا أخوي أهدى شوية نبدأ في هذا بعد ننزلوا عليه هذا أسهل حاجة. هذينا هذا قبر الصليب فكوا فيه. ايوه كسره بالجنب.
تيجي ابدا فيه من لوطه يا رب
راه يطيح يا شباب. لا الاحتياط واجب اصلا.